So you've heard the term surrogate. You may have heard surrogate mother. You may have heard gestational surrogate. What is a gestational carrier anyway? And what do all these terms mean? Well, stick around and I'll tell you just that. What's up? I'm Corlando Scott, and I'm a surrogacy attorney or assisted reproduction attorney or assisted reproductive technologies attorney. At the end of the day, I help people have babies and achieve their dream of becoming parents. And if you're watching this video, you probably have heard the term surrogate, and now you may be wondering, well, what is a gestational carrier and how are they different? Well, there's some nuances, but I'm going to explain them in this video. We'll look at the types of gestational carriers, and we'll also talk about what motivates a woman to become a gestational carrier. Stay tuned. So what is a gestational carrier? Honestly, for the most part, we can almost use all these terms interchangeably. Gestational carrier, surrogate, gestational surrogate, because they almost mean the same thing. And for the most part, when people are referring to them, they're talking about the same thing. At the foundation of it, a surrogate or a gestational carrier is a woman who carries a fetus to term on behalf of another person or couple and intends to give that child, once it's born, to those parents. And that's why we call them the intended parent, because that's the intent of the process. One of the points at which I draw the line in this terminology is when people refer to a gestational carrier or a surrogate as surrogate mother. And I know it's just common parlance to say the phrase surrogate mother, but the reason I draw the line is because we never want to confuse the surrogate with the legal mother. Stick with me and I'll explain why. So it's important to know that there's two types of surrogates. There is a gestational carrier, as we've said, and then there's also what we refer to as a traditional surrogate. So let's look at the gestational carrier in the proper sense of that phrase. A true gestational carrier undergoes the IVF process where the embryos are created outside of her body and not using her eggs. So a true gestational carrier has no genetic ties to the child that she will be carrying. In a true gestational carrier arrangement, the embryos are created from either the intended father's sperm or a sperm donor and the intended mother's egg or an egg donor. But in no way will we have a child being carried by a surrogate who's related genetically to the child. And that differs from a traditional surrogate. For a traditional surrogate, it's a woman whose eggs are being used in creating the embryos that result in the fetus that she's carrying. So in a traditional surrogacy, the surrogate is in fact genetically related to the child she's carrying. And that's why I think it's so careful to know exactly what type of surrogacy you plan on doing, and if you're doing a gestational carrier arrangement, to make sure that we know that the gestational carrier is in no way the mother. Also, in a traditional surrogacy arrangement, the intent is for the surrogate to not be the mother. Now, the lines are a little more cloudy because the surrogate is in fact genetically related to the child. We have to be careful with calling the surrogate mother because even in a traditional surrogacy arrangement, the intention is to carry the child to delivery and then hand the child off to the intended parent or parents. So now you know a little bit more about the two types of surrogates. But before I talk about what motivates a woman to become a surrogate, I know you've heard some stereotypes about surrogates. So comment below and let me know, what do you think about surrogates? Why do you think they do it? What motivates a surrogate to be a surrogate in your mind? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So, why do they do what they do? Well, let me tell you what I think, and we'll see if what I think matches what you think. First, we have to recognize that being pregnant and carrying a baby requires more than just physical strength. There's a mental component that any woman who's ever been pregnant will tell you is a serious deal. It takes a lot out of a person, both physically and emotionally and mentally, to carry a child. For surrogates, in addition to the physical and mental responsibilities and the weight that those carry, there's also additional elements. For surrogates, they can't carry the pregnancy any old kind of way. Because remember, they're working with you as a parent to make sure that they carry the child in a way that you deem fitting and responsible. So they have to make sure that their lifestyle lines up with what you agree to. In addition to changing their lifestyle choices potentially, there's also just the general risk of being pregnant. Surrogates don't get a free pass from all of the risks that are associated with being pregnant. Now, what you'll find is that for the most part, women who undergo the surrogacy process, they're more likely to have had easy pregnancies in the past. So they may have it a little easier than the majority of women, but it still doesn't exempt them from the same risks that every pregnant woman takes on when they carry a child. So with all of these things, you have to ask yourself, why would a woman do this? Well, here's what I think. And I'm not thinking this because I made it up. I'm thinking this because after representing hundreds of women, these are the things that I've heard and the things that I've experienced. First and foremost, I believe that surrogates want to share the gift of life. And that's one of the most amazing things that I get to experience on a daily basis. One of the things that you need to have to qualify as a surrogate is a successful prior pregnancy and delivery. So every surrogate that I've ever represented is already a mother. And being a mother, they understand the extreme joy that comes with parenthood, and they want to share that with another couple or individual. When we really get down to it, in my opinion, a surrogate is someone who values family, someone who respects family, and someone who is willing to put her body on the line to help someone else achieve the dream of family. Yes, in many cases, surrogates are compensated, but there are also cases where surrogates aren't compensated. Either way it goes, compensation doesn't exempt you from risks. And for anyone to take on the risk of their own physical body to help another person grow their family, that's a winner in my book. So if you're watching and you're thinking about becoming a surrogate, then click the link below and subscribe, and make sure you watch my video on how to become a surrogate.